Oh, hey, what's up YouTube? Didn't see you standing there. Since you're here with me today, we're going to go ahead and put together a desktop computer. I've got pretty much everything here you would need to build a desktop based around the Intel Coffee Lake series of processors, but you'll find curiously absent the processor itself. Actually ran into some minor issues getting it from the company I purchased it from. Nothing major. I'll talk more about that later in this video, but hopefully it'll be here soon. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and put together what I've got, which is pretty much everything else I'll be using. So stay tuned. Here's the massive case I'll be using. It's the Phanteks Enthoo Pro, I believe. Not sure the exact model number. As you can see, I can not even fit it in frame even when I back up pretty far. And it's really pushing the limits weight-wise of this Lazy Susan. But it's a really pretty case. I'm really glad I didn't cheap out and go with one of the less expensive ATX full tower cases. Trying to get into the show you the front panel connections. Two USB 3, two USB 2, two 3.5mm jacks. I believe that's a reset switch. Just spin it around. It has these intake filters both on the front side and the rear of the case at the bottom. Here's the rear panel, the 140mm fan. You can just see the massive intake fan on this, which is 200mm. Camera doesn't want to focus. There we go. And it also has room for I think a 420mm radiator up top, although I won't be using liquid cooling for this build. But let's pop the side off and take a look inside. Alright, here's the case all stripped down. As you can see, that intake fan is no joke. Here it is next to my hand. You can see the little kitty injury I got in my sleep thanks to one of my furry feline friends. Let's take a look inside and see what all the features. I'm not going to try and list every feature of this case because I'm sure I'll miss some, but we'll take a quick look. See, really nice cable management in this case. Hard drive cages actually are accessed from the reverse side over here, which is kind of unusual, but not a big deal. Here's the mount for the SSD. It has several of these mounting points, I think 6 all told. It only comes with this one bracket though. I think you'll have to purchase more brackets separately if you want to use more SSDs. In my case, right now I won't even be using this single bracket because I'm going to be using an M.2 drive, but the little bracket just pops off. You can mount it there. Other mounting locations are around the rear side of the case. I'm sure there's more somewhere. Has those toolless drive cages for the 5 1/4 inch drives, but it can still accept screws, so I'll probably just be relying on screws because I don't have the best luck with those toolless type brackets. It does have screws for all the slot blanks, which is nice. See, the cable management with this case is going to be really nice. It's got the cable ties everywhere. There's a little board for your fan connections. Definitely didn't need a case this big for the build I'm putting together, but the great cooling and wow factor of the full ATX case is something I was after. And the price, this case was around $99, so considering everything it came with, I think that was more than a fair bargain. And check this out. See if I can get in here one-handed. Came with this nice organized little box of all the computer building screws you might need, some extra zip straps, and little Velcro cable ties, and I believe this is for a radiator bracket mount. Just a little panel in there. And of course this case came with a pretty nice user manual, pretty in-depth. Here's the model number in case you're interested. Mine's the one on the right with no side window, which that's something that I just didn't want it to get scratched up. I prefer the plain sleeper type look anyways. One other thing I wanted to mention before we take a look at the other components is just how well built and sturdy this case is. It has basically no flex. I was a little concerned with it being a larger case that it might get dinged up in shipping, but it was packed very well, and the thickness of the steel, the gauge of the steel, it's just a very heavy, solid case. I'm really pleased with that aspect of this case, so hopefully this build goes as smoothly as I'm hoping it will. Alright, here's the motherboard I'll be using for this build. It's also a heavy hitter, being a full-size ATX board. Just check out the I/O connections left to right. We've got two USB 2 connections, a combined PS2 keyboard and mouse port, VGA, DVI, USB 3.1 ports, HDMI. It supports I think a maximum resolution of 4K at 30 frames, but I won't be using the onboard graphics. USB 3.1 generation 2 is that red USB port on top, and then a Type-C port below it. The Ethernet port, it's a Gigabit Intel LAN, which is how I'll be connecting this to my home network. More USB 3.1 connections and audio connections, and this does support 7.1 channel sound. Kind of take a look around the board a little bit. I'm not going to have time to show every feature of this board probably, but we'll kind of touch on some of the main things. It has 4 memory slots. The capacitors on this board are all solid except for this handful over here in the audio circuit, but they're all nice Nippon brand capacitors. Lots of PCIe. It has 4 PCIe X1s. It has 2 full-size PCIe X16 slots, but this one here only runs at X4 speed. This board does have 2 M.2 expansion slots and also an M.2 slot for an Intel wireless card. Looks pretty thoughtfully laid out. They have both orientations of SATA ports, so that's pretty nice, especially if you have to add in a component when the computer's already in the case or something like that. Gives you a lot easier access. I did take a bit of a chance when I purchased this motherboard because there are only a handful of reviews on Newegg, and they were mostly negative. Although the reviews on there, several of them were complaining about the graphical BIOS, so not sure exactly how valid the complaints will be. I guess I'll have to find out for myself, but I'm really hoping this build goes smoothly. Oh, and one more thing I will be utilizing that I forgot to mention is the legacy PCI slot. That was what I was actually looking at several motherboards, and I think that's what actually sold me. I wasn't even expecting to be able to get a PCI slot anymore on a motherboard. They're just too old at this point and out of fashion, but this board was on sale and had the PCI slot, and so this is the one that got the nod out of the batch of boards that I was looking at. This is my first Gigabyte board, and overall they have a very good reputation, so keeping my fingers crossed. One other feature I wanted to mention that this motherboard has, it's a pretty small thing, but I thought it was a nice touch. A lot of the other DDR4 memory motherboards that I've used have the clips only on one side of where the memory modules go, but on this board both sides unclip. So I like that a lot better, because the other type you just open one side and then just kind of smash your RAM stick down in there and it kind of latches on its own a little bit, but it's a little bit disconcerting. I think this is a much nicer design.